Today, we're here to celebrate the memory of a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Lucy Nowell. Lucy was a giant, a titan, whose efforts had a broad and deep impact on the field of scientific visualization and on the careers of dozens, perhaps hundreds of people in our field. Her educational background was eclectic and includes graduate degrees in theater and drama. Her first love was theater, which resonated with her deep passion for life and its expression. She was a tenured professor of dramatic arts and led the theater program at Lynchburg College. Then she shifted gears and earned her doctorate in computer science from Virginia Tech. After a few years in academia, she began applying her unique skills and user experience in the emerging field that became known as visual analytics. On 9/11, she had a profound epiphany that would shape the trajectory of her professional life. As she told it to me, she was physically at the Pentagon when the attack came. In the days that followed, while marooned on a friend's couch in the DC area, this epiphany became her life mission statement: to bring people together to work on problems of national importance. Today, you will hear from several persons who each have unique insights as to how Lucy has served as a mentor, champion, reality checker, trailblazer, and much more.
In remembering Lucy, I often think back to our many long and rambling and very productive conversations in her office in Germantown. She had a round desk piled high with papers and books, usually some excruciatingly personalized Excel budget document on the computer, and many photos of her loved ones on the walls, both the human and the canine kind. And she often wore a pop of color, a statement piece of jewelry. I think I'm drawn to this visual memory because it says so much about how Lucy presented herself as a whole person. She was all of these things: detailed and big picture, professional and personal, flamboyant and measured, and I think she saw other people this way too, as a whole person. Lucy made many important contributions to the Oscar mission in the time that I knew her, including her leadership of the field of scientific visualization, her contributions to the research foundations of the Exascale Computing Project, as well as scientific computing post-exascale, and putting experimental and observational data on the map as an important part of our mission. Perhaps most telling, though, and I think the things she would be most proud of, are the many research achievements and careers that flourished under her watch. On behalf of Oscar, I'm honored to have this opportunity to remember and appreciate our colleague and friend, Lucy Nowell.
I first met Lucy several years ago at Pacific Northwest National Lab. After I gave a presentation, Lucy introduced herself and told me about her research in user interfaces and the importance of getting feedback from users to better guide interface design. I had no idea then how much Lucy would influence the field of visualization and my own career. I got to know Lucy over the years and discovered that her first career was in theater and that she had been a professor of theater for several years until deciding one day to become a computer scientist and obtained a PhD in computer science from Virginia Tech. Lucy was an enthusiast. She was passionate about everything she did, from her commitment to changing the world as an NSF and DOE program manager to her love of theater and for her golden retrievers.
What I want to say is that I feel I owed my entire career to Lucy. Lucy has a precise vision about how visualization should and help computational sciences. She cares a lot about people around her, and she always held us to a very high standard for the quality of the research that we do. Because of Lucy, I was able to establish a group to nurture many young talents in the past decades. Lucy's support allowed me to develop techniques on information theory, distribution-based modeling, and ensemble simulation data analysis for scientific visualization. Dear Lucy, I myself and all my students and the past graduates from the Ohio State University, thank you sincerely.
I first met Lucy when she visited Berkeley Lab when I was a young scientist. From that first meeting, it was very obvious that Lucy was passionate about supporting young researchers and making a change in the world through science. Subsequently, I was funded under a program that Lucy managed. Lucy, with her background in human-computer interaction, recognized that scientists were an important element of science and that we often didn't address usability when considering interfaces for HPC software stack. She recognized that we needed a concerted effort to develop an understanding of human practices and scientific pipelines and drive usability at every level. Lucy really cared about the people around her. She always saw herself as an enabler and connected people and made sure researchers had the resources to do quality work. She went above and beyond to take care of the little and big details, whether it was the dietary restrictions at a meeting, thinking through the agenda, or making sure we had diverse teams. I will always be thankful that I had a chance to know Lucy.
Lucy was an amazing person with many talents. She played many roles. For me and members of our community, she cajoled us and she praised us. She listened to us and she spoke to us. When she spoke, I listened. She knew a lot that I didn't know about how to engage our funding agency. And I don't think I was the only person to learn from her. I think many of my Department of Energy colleagues did as well. For me personally, I can say with no reservation that I would not be where I am today without Lucy. She also offered a lot of really good coaching on how I could modify my research, not just so it would be more impactful for the scientific visualization community, but also to my stakeholders and to my funding agency. And all Lucy was just an incredible mentor who invested in me greatly. She was also an incredible person with diverse talent. She had a deft feel for when to speak, when to listen, when to praise, when to criticize. And finally, she just cared so much for the people around her. So I am going to miss her greatly.
Followed. Over time, I realized that Lucy was one of the smartest, most educated people I knew. Lucy was interested in and knowledgeable about everything. In her own words, she was an artist and a scientist. Lucy was the best speaker I have ever heard. Due to her first career, which was in theater, she could talk to an audience of 2 or 2,000. She had a mastery of everything high-performance computing and could easily articulate complex concepts in easy-to-understand terms. Personally, one of Lucy's biggest passions was her beloved golden retrievers, Sunny and Molly. Some of our best discussions were about what the dogs had gotten into lately. Frank was the love of her life, the man who brought her roses. Lucy, I will miss our dinners and discussions.
Lucy used to say that art is the force that slips in behind you as you're closing the door, a steady background, guiding presence that settles in the corners of your consciousness and shapes your world. She saw long before the rest of us the potential for artistic expertise via visualization to impact our understanding of data and thus science. I assume that conviction stemmed from the same source that provoked and enabled her to move from a stable 20-year career in the theater to becoming a guiding force in computer science visualization. She certainly was a force of nature. But for me, she was also a steady, encouraging presence as I waded into a culture where the language was foreign and the practices unknown. Mostly, I'm grateful for the dinners, where we found common ground, laughing over our large, unused collections of fabrics and the other absurdities of our lives. She was a mentor, a shepherd, and a joy. I'm left with the mystery of how someone who I saw infrequently has taken up permanent residence in my memories and in my life.
Lucy was special. When I first met her on a visit to PNNL, and I found she had DC links, we figured out how to meet. When she came to NSF, we shared the delight in all things data and set out to make a difference, changing the sharing of research products forever. Perhaps the most memorable of the NSF days was the first DataNet site visit, fondly remembered by a sacred view. When she moved to DOE, Oscar had no idea what was coming. She led and she mentored, and then she retired. Brilliant move. I loved her intellectual honesty, her commitment to science, her fondness for a good glass of wine and a great cup of coffee. But data, visualization, and the next generation of computers, programming, and computer scientists will all feel her presence.
She was special. Finding one word to describe her, it doesn't work, at least not for me. In no particular order: professionalism, intellectual integrity, passion, dedication, and commitment, focus on standards of quality, both for herself and for those who were fortunate enough to be in her sphere. All of these superlatives in any order are more than justified, and yet they fall short of truly capturing Lucy, at least as I remember her. Lucy was one of those few who was a good person, who didn't just act or behave good, but truly was to her core a good person. And those of us around her, we felt that goodness. Maybe the best I can say, even as I see her smile in my face, hear her voice in my mind, is that Lucy is someone who we will miss.
Lucy Nowell had a passion for bringing people together to solve important problems in science. As a program manager, she set a high bar for those she worked with. She expected strong technical contributions, and she cared deeply about the people and their partnerships. She demanded integrity, and when conflict and adversity arose, she dealt with it in a direct and inclusive manner. Her leadership philosophy and day-to-day actions left lasting impacts at the community level, and for many of us at the individual level as well. Personally, Lucy taught me one of the most important lessons in my career. She taught me the importance of authenticity in leadership. Lucy marched to the beat of her own drum. She was respected by the community for her technical vision and her integrity, while always remaining true to herself and being very uniquely Lucy. She was an inspirational role model for many of us, and although Lucy will be deeply missed, her impacts will continue to be felt for years to come.
Lucy was my hero, my mentor, and my friend. Her vision for effective scientific data understanding and visualization inspired a generation of visualization researchers. Her commitment to service is an inspiration to me to this day, and the community will miss her.
Lucy, thank you for all you've done for me personally and for the community. We owe you a deep debt of gratitude. Your caring attention has had a profound and positive impact and has shaped our field in a way that embraces science, technology, compassion, integrity, and the human experience.